Chapter 941 of One Piece is out, and oh boy, the action is already starting to really pick up again. It feels like the second act of Wano is slowly moving towards its climax. Not only did we get another huge revelation, but also a ton of other small and relevant details that might play a huge role later on in the story. But let's start from the beginning. We start off in the Flower Capital, where the captain of Orochi's ninja squad, Fukurokuju, informs the shogun about two major events that have taken place in Wano besides Kumurazaki's funeral. Firstly, there has been a major forest fire in Kuri, and secondly, the witching owl boy has at long last been captured. Orochi, however, does not seem to be very receptive for this news, as he's still mourning Kumurazaki's apparent death in his chambers. He finally breaks out in his dragon form though, while bawling his eyes out. Fukurokuju explains to the shogun though how Kiyoshiro has made the right decision to save his dignity by killing the defiant courtesan. He then quickly takes the opportunity to have Lord the Shogun out of his room to tell him about the true identity of the witching hour boy. And at hearing his true name, the shogun is of course in shock, since it's no one less than Tonoyasu, a poor guy from Ebisu town. No, wait, I think that's not it. Oh yeah, no. As Kanjuro explains to us later in the chapter, it turns out that he's actually the daimyo of Hakumai, one of the 5 regions in Wano. This is truly a turn that I would not have seen coming. Not that Yasu is the witching hour boy, but rather that he's actually another daimyo. This pretty much puts him on the same level as Oden himself, and we also learn that he actually fought together with Oden, which would explain why Orochi thought him dead all along. His true name is not Tonoyasu after all, but Yasuie, which seems to be a play of words with the name of the most famous daimyo of the Tokugawa clan in the Edo period, Tokugawa Ieyasu, that later became the shogun. Now, based on this connection, I guess you could argue that Yasuie is a candidate to become the next shogun in Wano, but I still think that the Kozuki family has a stronger claim to lead Wano after all, but we will see. There is also another interesting resemblance with Yasu, but I will get to that once we reach the prison hall. What strikes me once more here though is how many of Orochi's former enemies were actually able to slip from being caught for so long. I guess you could argue that the Udon mines are filled with thousands of rebels, but I still find it surprising that one of the daimyo that posed the greatest threat to Orochi's power managed to escape capture and execution, for now at least. Anyway, back in the palace, Orochi's mood has turned from sad back to angry pretty fast upon hearing this news and decides to execute Yasu and make an example of him. He therefore orders for the execution to be broadcasted publicly to the whole country. He then has to find out though that Kyoshiro, who is also present, has already made all preparations for this by himself. Orochi looks pretty angry with him on this remark, but it is not entirely clear to me whether it is because Kyoshiro assumed to have this authority or simply because of him killing Kumurasaki. While I suspect that it's the latter, it still shows us that Kyoshiro seems to have a great deal of power and confidence. And it makes you wonder, who is actually in control in the palace? The guy manages to get me excited simply by being in a panel or two every other chapter. Everything he does is hard to read, and I can't help but feel that Kyoshiro has his very own agenda in this chaos in Wano. As a small reference to the Game of Thrones watchers among you, you could say that he's the little finger of the Flower Capital. And I think we can agree that he's really good at playing the game. We now cut back over to the Udon prison mines though, where it gets clear that we have already reached the next day in the story. Queen has only just learned that his beloved Kumurasaki has been killed and is devastated about it. We see Luffy and Hyogoro, who are stuffed to the brim with food, waiting for the fight. Raizo and Karubu seem to have supplied them with something to fill their belly, and I wonder if Luffy kept training and learning more from Hyogoro the whole night. He goes on to call Queen a balloon while looking like one himself, and tells him to continue the fight. And we get Queen's typical pop face reaction upon seeing the two, which is very simple humor and not funny at all. Which is why I spilled my coffee laughing when reading it. Don't judge me. Queen, however, is not interested in the fight right now and turns on the video transponder snail to witness the funeral as well as the execution. Meanwhile, 2 of Queen's men let us in on a small and irrelevant detail. Luffy has eaten all of Queen's shiruko. Now, I don't want to hear anyone complaining about plot convenience ever again. Oda has sent Big Mom on her way to the prison. A hunger pain for shiruko seems to be imminent. Queen had huge amounts of shiruko himself, and Luffy has now eaten it all. What a diversion. The whole storyline about Big Mom just got a lot more intense than I expected it to be anyway. Oda took away the simple solution to the problem, which will either result in a much more interesting solution or disaster. And I'm honestly fine with either. But now we head over to Kuri, where we see the forest fire raging at Mount Atama, the base of Shutenmaru or Ajura Doji. We see the samurai riding towards Bakura town, since he's convinced that the headliner Hold'em is responsible for the fire. Hold'em in turn seems convinced that Shutenmaru died in the flames for some reason, but what actually seems to have happened here is that Kinemon took out one of Hold'em's men, placed him at the foot of the mountain and then started the fire himself. All this to bring the samurai on their side. At least that is what he seems to apply to Inuarashi. Both of them are heading towards Bakura town on what seems to be another mythical creature with flaming fur. And not only am I happy to see that the samurai could also come up with a really smart plan for a change, I also really want to see what the two are riding on somehow, even if it might not be that important. Instead, we turn towards the cemetery in Ringo, where we see Brook returning to continue his role as the skeleton in the well. What he actually finds in the house though is Hiyori sleeping in Zoro's arms with Toko right next to them. She really seems to have fallen in love with Zoro, which is something I can actually get behind. I honestly think it's kinda cute and it might have a good influence on Zoro. What I definitely 100% cannot get behind though is both of them having green hair, but Zoro's being white in the manga and Hiyori's being black. Ha, this manga is so unrealistic. Next we see the much more realistic living skeleton being filled in on Hiyori's story. In return, Brook tells them about what is going on in the capital. Upon hearing that the witching owl boy has been caught, Kumurazaki's in shock, which supports the idea of her being aware of Yasuo's true identity all along and why she took care of Toko for him. Toko herself, however, seems not to have known this, and same as Zoro, only understands who's actually meant when Brook brings up his name. This leads to Toko storming towards the capital, with Hiyori, Zoro and Brook following right behind her. I guess we might see them unite with the other Straw Hats in the capital very soon. Back in the capital itself, we see the procession of Komurazaki's funeral going through the streets. A very interesting detail here is that her body is supposed to be cremated. What will happen though if they found out that there is no body to cremate? Or better, what will happen if we find out that there actually is a body in there? The cremation is supposed to take place at the Rasetsu district, where the public prison is located as well. In the final panel, we see Yasu being crucified in front of the hall, which is drawn really impressively in my opinion. And there are two details in this image that really caught my attention. Firstly, the people of the capital really seem to love the former daimyo and call for his release. And the second detail is Yasu's hair. I don't know about you guys, but he strongly reminds me of Orochi somehow in this scene. I wonder if there might be any relation between them. Lastly, I want to mention that not only Zoro and Brook are heading towards the prison, but that Law should already be somewhere close. And since he got introduced to Yasu, I don't think he would leave him up there while only saving his crew. And since Orochi and his men are also heading towards the scene, I think we can maybe even expect a double breakout in one of the coming chapters. But now let's recap what we got in this chapter. We learned about Yasu's true identity as the witching owl boy, as well as one of the daimyo of Wano. He also seems to bear a close resemblance to the shogun, who is heading towards the prison himself. The same goes for Law, who might already be there, as well as Zoro, Brook, Toko and Hiyori, who by the way also seems to have fallen in love with our samurai. I'm sure that we will get a major confrontation in the Rasetsu district very soon. We learned that Kinemon and Inuarashi have set up Hold'em as the one setting Shutenmaru's base on fire to bring the Red Scabbard on their side. And in the Udon prison, it looks like the sumo battle might already be over, since not only has Queen learned that his beloved Kumurasaki has died, but Luffy also ate all of his favorite Shiruko. With a hungry Big Mom incoming, this prison also promises for a major action. I really feel like things are getting heated. All in all, I think that this was a great chapter that set the stage for the climax of the second act in Wano. It looks like we will get 2 attempted prison breakouts at the same time, and I wonder if both will actually be successful though. But now let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you like this video, don't forget to like, share and subscribe to be notified for any future content of mine. Or dislike, don't share and unsubscribe. It's a free world, people. Thanks so much for listening, I hope to see you around next time, and until then, have a great week.